Good morning, Brick Hollow third graders. Today we are working in Connected Respected Lesson 6 called Defining Conflict. We're going to start with our gathering, if conflict were a color. So when we're talking about conflict today, that means when there's a sharp disagreement between people. I want you to think about a time when you did not agree with someone else. Couldn't get along, you didn't agree with maybe something they wanted to play or something they wanted to do. You just could not agree with them. So think about that time and then think about how you felt when you were having that disagreement, when you couldn't get along. In front of you, your teachers have colored paper or markers to show you. I want you to think about a color that would go along with that feeling that you had when you didn't agree with somebody. Now, teachers, if you'll get your students into partners and give them a few minutes to share about why they picked the color that they picked. So they can talk about their conflict, how it goes along with that color, and share with their partner. All right, students, hopefully you've had enough time to share. We're going to go into our agenda check. So many of us chose different colors to represent conflict because that word brings many different things to mind for us. So we're going to explore the word conflict a little bit more. On the agenda, we'll have the opportunity to share some personal stories about a time when we were in a conflict. One of our goals will be to expand our definition of conflict beyond what we may already think it is. Then we'll have a short period of debriefing and closing, which will give us a chance to share our thoughts about conflict and how to deal with it in our lives. So we have a couple of activities. The first one is called a conflict web. Teachers, if you can draw the word conflict in a circle on the board. Students, what words or phrases come to mind when you hear this word? Teachers, as your students are sharing, if you want to write those words around your web. Hey, now, what are y'all noticing about the web? You'll probably see that most of the words are negative. Why do you think that most words are negative? Teachers, if you have a lot of negative words, if you'll circle those in one color, and if there are positive words, circle those in a different color. Maybe some of your words are violent words. Does conflict always have to be violent? So, conflict is a natural and normal part of life, and it's something that everybody experiences. You can experience conflicts at home, at work, at school. Countries have conflicts with each other, so it's a normal thing to have conflicts. So, students, work with your teacher, and I want y'all to come up with a definition about conflict. So take a few minutes, or a minute, and come up with what you think conflict means. I think a good definition about conflict is a strong disagreement or a struggle between two or more people. So we saw when we were making our web how our initial thoughts about conflict revolve around negative, sometimes destructive ideas. Now I want you in groups to come up with at least 2 ways that you think conflict might turn out okay, or it might even be positive. So teachers, let your students get in a group and see if they can add to our web after you give them a few minutes of a couple of ways that conflict could be a good thing and turn out okay. Teacher, when you add the positive things, if you can add it in a different color than the negative stuff. So sometimes having a disagreement might lead to a more positive ending for everybody. So sometimes conflict can be a good thing. All right, now we're going to move into our next activity called sharing stories. So I want you to think about that time when we started at our lesson about when you had a conflict with another person. When we're sharing our stories, don't say anybody's names. Okay, just you could call them a person, a friend, okay? And tell your partner, you're going to be in partners, tell your partner about where the conflict happened. Tell them who was involved, but don't say their names, what happened, and how it ended, and how you felt about it in the end. Okay? So I know sometimes my oldest son and I have conflicts because he's 14. And some days he thinks he knows it all, and he does not like to have parents telling him what to do. So we have conflicts sometimes. But it's not always a bad thing, because I've learned with him in this age, sometimes he just needs to let me hear his side of the story before I say anything. And so we actually, from conflict that has arisen, have better communication, because he'll come to me and say, okay, I want to ask you something, but I don't want you to say no. So I've sat down and I've thought about the pros and the cons, and I've made a list, and I really want you to look at it and put some thought into it. And so before I just give him an answer, I look at the research he's done, and we can compromise a lot more now. So that was a positive to a conflict that we had had in the past. So take a few minutes and share about a conflict that you've had with somebody. Remember, we're not naming names. All right, now we're going to move into our debriefing. What are some of the outcomes of the conflicts that you described? So what happened after the conflict? Does the conflict always end in a bad way? Conflicts can end in different ways. Sometimes one person ends up feeling bad and the other feels good. Sometimes both people end up feeling bad. Sometimes both people end up feeling good. Everyone has conflicts. They are a part of life. And we can't make conflict go away, but we can learn skills on how to manage conflict when one comes up. Moving into our closing activity about managing conflict. Okay? I want you to take turns or go around the room, and I want you to finish this sentence. One thing that works for me to manage conflict is to. So something that works for me to manage conflict is to talk it out. Somebody might not know that you're upset with them unless you say, hey, this is really bothering me. I'm really upset. So something that helps me manage conflict is to talk about it. What are some ways that helps you to manage conflict? I hope you have a wonderful week. Your teachers are still looking for bucket fillers, and I want you to be practicing being a respectful student, practice managing your conflicts, and we are going to be starting to talk about a new character skill called responsibility this week. So I'll be seeing you in your library times. I hope you have a fabulous week.